Hello, everyone. Time for my disclaimer. The views that you hear from the guest may not represent those of the station or the host, and any information you hear, please consult your primary care physician. Hello, everyone. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, entertain. Folks, I do have phenomenal guests on my show, if I have to say so myself, and today is no exception. I have with me today a very talented person. Oh, my goodness. I just meet such wonderful people doing this show, and I'm forever grateful. My guest today is Lillian Brummett, who's from British Columbia, Canada, and Lillian and her husband Dave are the team behind the Brummett Media Group. They high-five each other cheerfully as they pass each other on the way from checking off one item or another from their long to-do list. Their businesses include Dave's Music Studio and percussion accessory products and graphic design work, as well as numerous, and I mean numerous, award-winning nonfiction books and popular blogs. One of the books, which we will talk about today, is From One Small Garden, which has over 300 delicious, nutritious recipes. And I met Lillian on the site Alignable. So I want to welcome Lillian Brummett to Chatting with Betsy.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this show. Betsy, I'm so grateful to be here on your podcast. I've been listening to so many archived episodes of phenomenal guests that you've had on that are so inspiring, and so thank you for what you do. I really appreciate that, Betsy.
Oh, thank you so much, Lillian, for your kind words. That gets me verklempt, but in a good way. in a good way. It's been, I forgot to announce it last week, but by the time the show is aired, well, yeah, it could be September, but last Sunday, August 7th, was my husband Matt's birthday. And it was, it's a mixed bag of emotions. It always will be. But I just want to tell the audience, because I forgot last week, thank you for listening to my show and sharing my show, because really when you do share my show, you are honoring my husband Matt's memory, because Matt was always my inspiration and always will be my inspiration for what I do. So I just appreciate everyone honoring his memory by sharing this show, and that's to help others. And that's why I do Chatting with Betsy. It's really to help other people to know. I want people to know they're not alone. We all think we're alone and how we feel, but we're not alone, and there are resources available to help you. And that's really the basis for Chatting with Betsy. Lillian, you are amazing. You and your husband, how do you have time for each other with all that you do?
Finding time to just be and to just relax. Just Dave and I and our girls, our dogs, our fur kids. We find that quite a challenge to schedule that in. And in fact, this year we found ourselves feeling a little bit more exhausted than normal. We're in our 50s. We're slowing down a little. So we decided to really, schedule in that time and really just, okay, we're shutting things off. We're not doing things at certain times on certain days. And he's actually, instead of taking vacation time, because he has a job that allows him to have vacation time. So instead of taking that, it benefits the work as well for Dave to do it this way. He's taking long weekends once a month or twice a month. And so we get these long weekends, and that day that is our extra day, we don't do anything on that day when it comes to work or when it comes to, making appointments or any of those interviews or any of that. I make sure, nothing scheduled on that day, no lessons, nothing. It's just me and him. We still end up doing things because the to-do list is there, but most of that day we take just for ourselves to spend with each other. And that has been really, really helpful this last year to take, actually schedule that in, to actually book time off work for that purpose.
I love that. That is so beautiful, Lillian. How long have you and Dave been married?
We've been together 32 years.
Wow. Oh, that's beautiful. What you mentioned, that's so important. And it's important, and I'm not a marriage counselor here, folks, so I'm just going to give you my opinion because I was married for 39 years. It's so important to have that time as a couple and to just disconnect, just like you and Dave were doing, and to pay attention and be fully aware with each other, I think is just necessary to do that, to maintain a healthy marriage.
Yeah, it's necessary for mental health, period, in my opinion.
Yes.
I work from home, so my office never goes away. My husband has the day job, and he also has his bands and his students, so he's sometimes on the road, he's sometimes going to a different gig, he's sometimes, at the day job. So he gets away from the home office. He comes back to it, but he gets away from it in and out, whereas it's always there for me. And so it can be long, long days if I allow myself to do that. And also, I manage most of the household duties in regards to regular maintenance, cleaning and, laundry and recycling, garbages, all that kind of stuff, managing the girls, managing menu plan, managing the gardens. And then when Dave's able to be around to do home things, then he's usually the repair guy. He's putting things together. He's repairing something. He's building something. So, he's equal. He's putting in his matter. But I find for myself, because I'm at home like 24/7, it never goes away. So there's always something to do. And there is a tendency for a person to not only feel overwhelmed by the to-do list, but also underwhelmed by the amount that they were maybe able to accomplish that day or that month or that week. And I think I have learned over, 25 years of being an entrepreneur that you really have to just let things go at a certain point. You have to accept that you're human, accept that you're not going to be 100% every single day, and to really allow yourself to recharge those batteries. And maybe it took me a little longer than it should have to have learned that lesson, but I really systematically apply it now.
Well, you know what? You're never too old, Lillian. I'm 64, and I can't believe I'm going to be 65 and getting my Medicare card in December. It's like, where did my life go to? And I actually, I'm very open about myself on my show. And I was talking to, I get grief counseling, but I was talking to my counselor yesterday, and I told my counselor I have learned finally at the age of 64 to honor my body. And what do I mean by that is because when I'm very tired and this heat is knocking me out and it's making me ill, actually, and when I get so tired that my arms hurt because that's fibromyalgia, I will go lay down. I can lay down now. I can honor my body, and I can lay down and rest. When I was caregiving for Matt, I couldn't do that. I could not just, go lay down on my bed and shut the door to the world. But now I can, and you have to, I tell you folks out there, audience, you have to honor your body. Listen to your body, because if you don't listen to your body's going to make you listen to it. It could be you get sick, you end up in bed, and you have no other choice but to listen to your body then. So it's very, very important.
Stress, overwork can wreak havoc on the body. On the body. Also, your mental health, but your body. I went through that frequently. Recently, we've had this bout of not having to deal with grief. And it is something really strange for us because I've been dealing with grief on various levels from different experiences since I was 18. It just seemed like every year or two there was another big thing that happened that I ended up having to deal with. You know, the death of my biological father when I was 18 to cancer, and then my grandparents after that, one after another, and then, you know, the friends that either committed suicide or passed away because of drug overdose or because of car accidents. And there was a friend that I was partying with who got raped and murdered by a priest. And then there was, you know, the neighbor behind me who I was really close to, and she was tied up and gagged and left by some thieves, and she choked and died that night. And then there was my parents' suicide, and then there was Dave's mom passed to cancer, and then her dad passed to cancer, and it was just my best friend passed away, and this is just one thing after another, for years and years. And then in between that, I was caregiving for the various, you know, for the folks, and not giving myself time. There wasn't time in between to really recover. It was just one after another, and then. So it felt like I was being hit and then hit and then hit and then hit. And sometimes my grief would be something I could, you know, manage, and other times it would come out in negative ways because it wouldn't come out to other people, but I would feel it in myself, this like anger, like everything made me angry. You know, I would close the door too loud. Oh, that made me angry. Like I was just a walking angry ball of angriness. You know, and then it took some time for that to fade. And, like, I think we have to allow ourselves as caregivers the time and the space, because I didn't allow myself that, because the time that I did take off, I was beating myself up about it. I was trying to manage my own life, my own marriage, my own business, and then by doing that, I felt like I was taking away from them. And then if I wasn't at my 100%, which was often when I was tired, then I would have the guilt and the weight of that. And I think that people around caregivers, if you don't know what to do, step in and just go and read a book or hang out for a while with a person to allow the caregiver to just go, not to go and do chores and to do things like that's what we tend to do. We're like, oh, I got this moment. Okay, I'm going to go get busy and do these other things on my list. And instead of doing that, but to, you know, go lie down, go to the spa, something that relaxes them, go sit down by the lake or the river or whatever it is, meditate, and get away from the weight of what you're experiencing, because it can wreak so much havoc on your life. When Dave's dad passed away to throat cancer, that was another, you know, one of the big hits. It was just after my best friend had passed. And my weight on myself, the grief on myself, just was not fading, and my health was declining. I was, you know, putting on weight. I was going through menopause as well. I still am, and so all of that was happening. And I was deficient in vitamins. I had sleep deprivation. All this stuff had built up, and I had to physically recover from that for a couple of years. Of being really, really careful and really, really taking care of myself, and post-traumatic anxiety disorder that I have now, all because I didn't allow myself I didn't have the chance, or maybe I didn't allow myself, or maybe I didn't reach out enough to give myself the chance to recover and to learn, I guess, what I've learned now. You know, that you don't have to be 100% all the time. It's okay to ask for help and really, really take that extra time that you do have to just rest, take a nap, take a bath, take a long shower, hit the hot tub, whatever it is that makes you relax, even for 15, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever you can get away, and feed your soul, let yourself just be and feel what you're feeling and be okay with that.
Yes. Oh, Lillian, I just loved what you said, because I say the same things, the same exact thing. You have to feed your soul. You have to take care of yourself. And, I mean, I've done many shows with different people about grieving. And, you know, when we don't, and I'm very sorry for all your losses. My heart goes out to you. When we don't allow ourselves to feel our grieving and to let ourselves grieve, it's just going to come back and bite us right in the rear end. It's going to come out like it came out with anger with you. A lot of people. I was angry too. And what I really can't stand is when people say to be strong. And folks, I'll tell you what, you want to know how I feel about that? Go on my personal page, Betsy Wurzel, Wurzel, and I did a rant last week. It's also on YouTube under Betsy Wurzel of how I feel when people tell others to be strong just because they're crying because they are either watching someone they love die or someone has died. How dare anyone say that to someone? Because as a society, we're not taught how to handle loss, talk about grieving or dying. But we are emotional human beings. We're not robots. And we are allowed to cry and to grieve. And even if you are, I was just talking to someone last week, I was on their show, men especially need to be able to show their emotions and don't judge people and don't stigmatize people because they are crying or they are going for counseling, or maybe they're taking an antidepressant or anti-anxiety. You know, I feel this way. No one knows what life is going to throw at us. So people should not judge.
The one thing I have noticed, too, is that not only do we have to be patient with ourselves, because the grieving process is going to be a different length and at a different time, and even years later it can hit you over and over again when you're reminded about something or a special day comes up or another passing happens, and so previous griefs come up. Like, these things are okay, and it's normal to have that. And we don't need to be ashamed of that. You know, I had one time where I was going through the grocery store, and for no reason at all, there was nothing in the grocery store that was had brought up a memory or anything like that. And my husband was with me, of course, because of my anxiety disorder. I don't really go out and do things by myself much. And so I was like, you know, walking around and doing the shopping, and all of a sudden it hit me, and I just had this overwhelming urge to just crumble on the floor and cry in public, you know, and I almost laughed at myself, like, how ridiculous is this? You know, you never know when it's going to hit you, and it's okay to have that, you know, it's normal and it's okay to go through that. And give yourself the time, be patient with yourself, be patient with others. That's something my older brother taught me, saying that he taught me, and I told myself that as a mantra, because everybody's going to react differently to whatever scenario you're facing during the grieving or after the grieving or estate management or whatever. Everybody's going to deal with those different stresses differently, and we have to sort of accept that. Accept what is, be patient. This too will pass, you know. Sort of give yourself those chances, allow it, you know, just keep on on striving forward.
Yes, I've cried in the grocery store too, Lillian.
Did you?
I did. Yeah, because it's weird. I mean, there's a lot of times where I'm okay, but one time I saw double stuffers that Matt liked. I started tearing up. Or I see the family bag of chips, and I'm like, I don't need to buy that anymore. I need to buy the family size anymore. And it hits you. Or, you know, during holiday times, and you see Christmas cards or Valentine cards, or if I see anniversary cards, I'll just burst out just, you know, in tears. And I don't care what people think. I'm too old to care what people think these days. I just, you know, if I start crying, I start crying. I was in I don't know if you guys have it up in Canada. We have Dunkin' Donuts down here in the U.S., and I was thinking, Matt used to go get me a coffee once in a while, and I was standing in Dunkin' Donuts, and I started to cry. It happens, and I don't think that we should be, ashamed. I know it's probably a human reaction to say, oh, don't cry to somebody when you want them to feel better, but we can't fix what's happened. We can't fix a loss that someone died.
Oh my gosh, when we're in the throes of grief or even then afterwards and we're still feeling sensitive about it, the last thing we really need is for people to come up to us with advice. I know that they're really, really trying to help. So I'm going to give an example. So I was in a car accident, a 3-car pile accident, and I was dealing with some real physical issues. And one of Dave's students' parents came by, and their intent, obviously, was to be really kind and helpful. And, I tried to take it that way. But they said to me, oh, you know what you should do? You should stretch. And I just about lost it because in my head I'm just like, oh, really? Yeah, all this full-time therapy that I'm in and all these different therapists and physio people working on me all day and massage therapists, that never once came up that I should be stretching. Like, I just thought, come on, really, because it's standard, right? It was the very first thing they have you do when you go to those. And I was in physiotherapy 5 hours a day every day for 5 days a week for a year and almost a half. So, I just your head sort of explodes because, they're trying to be kind, but they say something like that just irks you so hard when you're super sensitive, you're all prickly and you're super sensitive, or someone says, be strong, or, just get over it, that kind of thing. Like, say, a survivor from abuse, which I am as well from childhood, someone will say to me that, oh, how come survivors don't just get over it? And I have to sort of choke back your response and say in a very nice, diplomatic way, well, these things, they kind of haunt you, and you think that you've recovered and you're moving on in life, and all of a sudden something bothers you and you realize, oh, okay, I've got a little more work to do on that particular issue. And we all feel that with whatever issue that we're going through. But in the particular with child abuse, some people say, well, why don't you just get over it? It's, it's from the past. Why can't you just get over it?
Yeah.
And that's another thing that people that are survivors, when they're in that prickly state, rubs them the wrong way, because the advice, while well-intended, is actually kind of, it comes across as like, why don't you just buck up, pull up your big girl pants, and get on with life,
Yeah, snap out of it, right, Lillian?
Yeah,
I love that one. Snap out of it.
That's kind of how it comes across, yeah.
Yeah, I totally get that. I used to suffer from depression when I was a child, and even through most of my adult life, and I am a survivor of growing up in a emotionally and mentally abusive household. And I do have post-traumatic from that and from caregiving. And it is a real thing. It was not recognized 15 years ago when I complained about caregiver post-traumatic, but it is recognized now, thankfully. I've always been ahead of my time. And it's real. And, I'm a big mental health advocate, Lillian, a huge, big mental health advocate. And I tell the listeners all the time, if you need help, and actually August, which I just was aware of today, is Overdose Awareness Month. If you need help, it's not weakness to go for help. It's a sign of strength. Go for help. Talk to your primary care doctor. I don't know about in Canada, but in the U.S., the toll-free number is 988. If you need help, if you have suicidal thoughts, and, we need to stop the stigma. Now, you've had a lot of loss, and when you have a loss from someone who was murdered, someone who committed a suicide, that not only are you grieving that person's loss, but the shock of how they died. The trauma. that puts you in, and the shock. And, you know, and then I know there's well-meaning people, but people then start asking questions. You know, well, why did they do that? Oh, blah, blah, blah. You know what, folks? I'm a Jersey girl, so I'm just going to be very blunt. People who commit suicide, in my opinion, they don't do it because they're chicken. They're not doing it because they didn't do it because they're weak. They're doing it because they are in so much freaking pain, emotional pain, that they can't take it anymore. And they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So stop your judgment and stop your stigma. There are people who really feel that way. And I want people who feel that way, if you're listening, to please go for help and to know that there are resources out there. Couldn't help myself, Lillian. I had to get on my
as well. I mean,
thing.
When people consider it a weakness or some kind of spiritual faux pas, when they have no idea what those people have gone through and what they're suffering from. There was a time when I was young, I was also in a place of not wanting to go on in life. And my attempt failed. I was caught twice before anything happened. And the next time was basically an intervention. So the first two times they didn't know that they had stopped it. It was, but they had caught the situation, and I was no longer able to do it. And then the third time, it was somebody who had witnessed and stopped it. And so those times, I hated myself for failing to complete the project because I felt like I couldn't even do that right, you know. It was
How old were you, Lillian?
To be, and it was such a, like, you know, when you're dealing with a nightly nightmares and you're feeling the pain that you're feeling and the inner hate that you have and the confusion that you have as a child, when you're going through things like that, then those thoughts come up, those dark thoughts come up. And sometimes some of us make some attempts in that direction. And when that fails, when we fail, then we start, it's another reason to beat up on ourselves, you know. And so that was a real hard thing for me, like, to go through, and then to have my mom do that, you know. So I think that she also had tendencies that way. When she would hit depression, she would think those thoughts. Like looking back in my life, I recognized some of that, what I was going through in her. And so I think that she was probably thinking of it a few times in her life, you know. And then at the end, when she did, I was left with this, the shock of it, the weight of it, the should I have stopped it, the what if I had said something, the, you know, all those thoughts that go through your mind, and you kind of feel like a bit responsible, like, because I had moved away about 3-hour drive away. And so we would go there once or twice a month, but I wasn't there all the time anymore towards the end. And I felt really bad about that. They were thinking about moving out where we lived. They sold their farm, and 2 days later, 2 days after Christmas, they committed suicide in the hotel. So, like, the whole impact of that was really, I don't know. And yet I expected it. She was hinting at it. I knew she was chronically ill, so was he. They were in so much pain and taking so much prescription drugs, and their life was just basically, you know, grumpy miserableness, you know. And they didn't see a way out of it. That was what that's what they pictured for their future, that and worse, you know. And so I understand where they were coming from, and I have empathy and compassion for that. And it was still, and they did everything they could to make the process for me as the person dealing with the estate. I mean, they took care of everything. They had it all lined up for me, so all I had to do is follow the 1, 2, 3s. And, you know, it was a 2-year process, but it was still, you know, visiting lawyers and whatever, but it was all lined up for me. They eased it really well for me, very well planned, and I really appreciate that of it. But there was a lot of things that, made me really angry afterwards. I was expecting to have my mom's memoir that she was writing, and one of my brothers had witnessed, and supposedly this was going to answer a bunch of questions that we couldn't talk about because it would bring up too much darkness in our relationship. So she was going to leave this behind for us, and I searched for it, and it's not there. And then I find some scrap paper that's all cut up in 4 pieces because she's a reuser like me, and she was using it as note paper, and I turned it over, and there was a section of the memoir. I'm like, really, you used it as note paper? You couldn't even leave that? There were some things that really made me kind of angry afterwards, and trying to come to terms with our relationship from the past and all of that. It was really, really heavy process for me to go through. I went through a couple of really dark periods, but we're doing pretty good now. One of the things that my mom really inlaid in me when I was still living with her when I was a child, before I was 13, she and I used to go to the library all the time, and we would come back to our home from, on the bus with our arms just loaded with these books, and my books, her books. And I think that part of her played a huge role in me being able to, read a whole bunch of self-help books. That was my go-to. It was the first thing I did. You went to counseling, I went to self-help books. And I started, learning on my own and researching on my own. And I think that came from her. And I think my passion for literacy came out in being able, I wrote out my confusion and angst as a youth through poetry and stories and things like that. And so I've always turned to the pen in that regard to purge these kinds of things and to share, which is, I guess, why I do it now as a living. But at the time, it was a tool for me to process stuff. So when my mom passed, all of a sudden I didn't have that tool anymore. It disappeared. It left me feeling like I was in an ocean, kind of wading, trying to keep my head above water with no lifesaver, because that pen had left me. And it took about, 2-3 years before I was able to actually write my first poem about what I was feeling. And so that loss of that tool was really, really hard for me to have that. It was my cushion, it was my soft place. And all of a sudden that disappeared. And so that was really strange for me. Never happened to me before. Hopefully never happens again. But I don't know if others go through that when they're going through their grieving process, their soft place that they used to feel comfort that's gone. But that was a really shocking aspect of the grieving process there.
Well, thank you for being so open, Lillian, and sharing. How old were you when you tried suicide? I'm just curious as to your age.
I was 12 in the school my mom had sent me to. She sent me away. She had married her third husband, and he was an alcoholic and a raging abuser. And both my brothers were 16 and on their own. They were gone. And she sent me away because she told everyone because I was a bad kid. She sent me away to a little boarding school for a couple years. I didn't see her for a while. And so I did it. I tried then. Later on, she said that she sent me away because she was trying to protect me, but I'm not 100% sure that was accurate, but that's what she said, because she said she didn't know what was going on, so why would she send me away to protect me? But anyway, so so when I was there, I had tried there because I felt like I don't know what I felt. I felt like I had nothing. I don't know. I just felt so alone, I guess, and I felt like I had nothing. And
I was 8 or 9, and I tried to suffocate myself in a linen garment bag. That's what garment bags back then they had, and I couldn't do it. And then one time I thought of stabbing myself, and I was 8 or 9, folks, and I thought of ending my life because I felt unloved and unwanted in my home. I was the baby for 6 years, and my brother was born, and I had 3 friends that had left. They moved very close. I was grieving, didn't know what grief was back then, because back then in the 60s you didn't discuss your feelings, and you just didn't do that. And I've come, a long way, even in caregiving. I don't know why I was idolizing the railroad tracks. Now, I would have went on them. I would have ended my life. I wouldn't have left Matt and Josh. But, I didn't want to face what I was going to face. And I pulled myself out of that dark rabbit hole. I thankfully never went back in there. But, these things, Lillian, and I appreciate you talking so openly about it and sharing it. That's very kind and generous of you, because I want people to know there's other people who have felt the same way, that have gone through the same things, and they made it out through the other side, and they're doing something. And, I made it out through the other side. Lillian made it out through the other side, and there's hope out there. And, people automatically, they go to judgment, stigmatize. Well, why did they overdose, or why did they choose to end their life? They had their, they had their whole life ahead, because they don't see it that way. And until you are in a dark place like that, you don't know what it's like. You don't know what that is like for people. So, I say I use my microphone as my bullhorn to hopefully change the way people think. And, when someone does commit suicide, it's like, okay, well, why didn't we see something? Why didn't that person tell us, or why didn't we see it? Because people are very good at hiding things. They don't want you to know sometimes. And even when someone goes for counseling and they go for help, it was their decision. And I don't believe sometimes there's anything you can do to stop it, because that's what they decided. That was their choice, even after going for help. Many rich people, Kate Spade, look, multimillionaire. She committed suicide, had everything. She probably was in a very dark space and couldn't see a way out. Excuse me. And, and then, when we think, well, how come when someone who's rich and famous, they do that? Why? They have everything, because they don't have inner peace, folks, and you cannot buy inner peace. You just can't.
Money
it's something
has nothing to do with it.
Right, money has nothing to do with it.
You go to the poorest villages and you see the happy people. Money has absolutely nothing to do with our personal happiness. Our perception has everything to do with it.
So true. Before we end, Lillian, I want you to talk a little bit about your book, From One Small Garden, over 300 delicious, nutritious recipes. How did you come about doing that book?
Well, that one is a real joy for me. It is actually our 6th book and most recently released. And in this book, we actually have celebrated people who are no longer with us by sharing our versions of their recipes, our favorite of their recipes. And then, of course, we made our version of them, often a healthier version of it. And so we honored them by sharing some of those recipes in there. We've got a few from Dave's mom, a few from his dad, a few from my mom, his uncle, things like that, and some friends of ours and that kind of thing. So it was nice to be able to, honor their legacy in this way. and share it with others. So we're really pleased about that. The main focus of this book is to encourage people to really participate in the Shop Local movement in regards to supporting your local food suppliers, going to those farmers markets, or if you're able to grow on your balcony or your step or you're on a tier on your fence or a vertical garden on vines, whatever you can grow, wherever you can grow, really does have a massive impact on the health of the environment, on birds, bees, butterflies, but not just those, but every spot, every inch of green space has a huge impact on climate change, urban glare, a variety of different climatic issues. And by shopping locally, buying from your local farmers during peak season, that means that you're buying things when they're at their highest nutrition because they've just been pulled out of the ground or picked off the tree. Because as soon as they're put into storage, they start losing nutrients. And as soon as they're shipped, they're packaged, repackaged, shipped to somewhere else. Everywhere they go, there's this fossil fuel impact. There's all kinds of impact to our menu. And so this book helps us address that by encouraging us to shop locally, grow your own, and what to do with those harvests. So if you're going to buy something, you come back and you've got all these baskets of these things that are in peak harvest at these really low prices because it's peak harvest. What can you do with that? So we show you how to make these big batches of soup that you can, package down into yogurt containers and freeze them in your freezer for future meals or mason jars or whatever you like to use for freezing. And so we show you how to go about using that produce in a really healthy, nutritious way. There's over 300 recipes in this book, and the very last chapter actually takes it a step farther. It shows you how to make your own hairspray and things like that out of food waste, like your lemon peels. You can make your own hairspray out of that, things like that. So we show you how to reduce food waste by turning that little bit of leftover into something else as well. So it's a really powerful book, I feel. I'm really, really proud of it. It's been about 20 years in the making from, because we've had, chef and cook and pastry chef type positions as in our careers. And so we've been developing and working on these recipes for some time, and it's really cool to be able to share them now.
Oh, well, thank you. And where can people buy this book, Lillian?
Oh, they can get it at Amazon. Just go into Amazon of your country, amazon.com, .ca, whatever, and look for Dave and Lillian Brummet, Brummet, in the book section of Amazon shopping, section department. And you'll find all of our books there, including From One Small Garden, Over 300 Delicious, Nutritious Recipes is the title.
Yes, and folks, go on Amazon.com and check out all the books that Lillian and Dave Brummet wrote, because it's I was blown away. My goodness, such talented people.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you, Lillian, for coming on. Lillian Brummet, you were a pleasure to talk to. Thank you for sharing such a sacred passage of time that you went through. I feel very honored for you to share that with me and my listeners, because, we need to talk about mental health issues. And the one thing grateful about COVID is that it brought out mental health issues, making it more acceptable to go for mental health. I've been talking about this for years. Anyone who's watched any of my car videos knows I talked about mental health, especially with the caregiver. And we need to talk about it more. And I'm glad that more people are talking about it. Celebrities are talking about it. Like I said, I've always been ahead of my time. So I've been talking about this for years. And, what's that saying? People who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. And
it's more prevalent than we think. They say 50% of the population is currently, within the last year, has experienced some form of mental health issue, whether it be, stress or sleep disorder, or whether it be, anxiety or whatever it is that they're going through. 50% of us have gone through it in the last year. So it's prevalent. It's just we don't talk about it. We see it as a weakness when it really isn't.
That's true. Yes, and I just read, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, that I read that children and teenagers are having a very, very difficult time. And they are suffering from anxiety and depression. And parents, guardians, I'm begging you, listen to your children. Believe them when they tell you they are having mental health issues. Take them to the pediatrician, your primary care physician, and get recommendations. Do not ignore it. Do not shut down that communication. They are being open with you and trusting you to help them. So please do that. And I say that from the bottom of my heart.
Shut down the negativity in your home life. Like, if there's negative news on, shut off that negative news. If you're getting newspapers that feed nothing but negative news, don't subscribe to those newsletters and those newspapers. Subscribe to something else that feeds your family and your family's mind with positive information. I used to run a radio show called Conscious Discussions Talk Radio Show. I ran it for about 15 years. And there was a lady who said that she listened to the archived episodes with her family at dinner time. Rather than having the TV or the radio or anything else going on, they would listen to the show because my guests were talking about the positive things that they were doing to make the world a better place. And so it was really inspiring, and how people were rolling up their sleeves and getting proactive and doing something about it instead of pointing fingers and judging. And so she said that it really helped their family. It created dialogue. It inspired the kids. They started getting involved in things, and it really evolved their family. So if you can get involved with something like that and really protect your minds from the negativity in the world, because they're only out there to sensationalize. There's so much positive stuff going on in the world. All we got to do is pay more attention to it.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lillian. And that leaves me to say, folks, if you missed any of the show, you can catch it wherever you hear your favorite podcasts or shows. I highly recommend subscribing to Chatting with Betsy. It is free because I believe in being positive in my show, and I think it's a positive experience to listen to my show. So I have to say that. And, yes, I toot my own horn. And I want to thank Jeannie White, who produces the show and writes the blog. Please read the blog. It will have information about Lillian Bromett, how you can get on her website and buy her books at Amazon.com. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, CEO of Passionate World Talk Radio, who makes this all possible. Thank you, listeners. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. And as I always say at the end of my show, in a world where you could be anything, please be kind, because we need it. And I also want to add, shine your light. Be a light in this world. Shine it bright, and don't care if people like it or not. You just keep shining away and being kind. Till we chat again, this is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio. Bye-bye now.